Welcome to the MAHA Media Hub, and welcome to the MAHA Revolution. I'm Tony Lyons, president of MAHA Action. We're here to make it easier and more affordable to be healthy in America. We're here to combat the fact that we're living in the first generation where children are likely to live shorter lives than their parents. We're here to make sure that our food is healthier than it's ever been before, that companies are convinced to stand behind their products. We're here for dialogue and debate. We're here to engage with all stakeholders, private companies, government, activists, everybody who will engage with us. And we're here to build relationships, to build bridges, to support and encourage and get tangible results for the American people. And we're here to support and amplify the incredible progress that's being made by the Trump administration and by Secretary Kennedy. What's happening is nothing short of historic. You need only look at the food pyramid being turned on its head, being redirected towards gold standard science. These are changes, and this is progress that we can all be proud of, and that will improve the health outcomes for every American. And I'm proud to be part of that. One of the great strengths of the MAHA movement is that everyone has a story. Last week, Mike Tyson shared his MAHA story right alongside Secretary Kennedy and USDA Secretary Rollins. Mike spoke about losing his sister to obesity at just 25 years old. That should never happen in this country. We're the most powerful country in the world, like Mike Tyson said. And the solution is simple. Our new dietary guidelines will unlock the power of health and do so affordably. America has uniquely produced the greatest athletes in the world, as we've seen in the Super Bowl, not so much this year, but in, the Winter Olympics, in all kinds of ways, in all kinds of venues. But today, 70% of young Americans are not physically fit enough to qualify for military service. And that's a national tragedy. And it's exactly what our dietary guideline reforms aim to fix. Secretary Kennedy, Secretary Rollins, Mike Tyson, and everyone on this call is fully committed to reversing that trajectory, as are 95% of the American public. We are on the right side of history, and we're not going to stop. At the same time, we're fighting provisions in all kinds of different acts and in all kinds of different venues and states. And the one we're looking at just today is the federal farm bill that would weaken pesticide oversight. MAHA is against any kind of a pesticide liability shield or any kind of liability shields for any products because they tend to lock in the status quo, to stifle innovation, and to incentivize bad behavior. So corporations must stand behind their products, work to improve them. And lawsuits are valuable information that incentivize them to dedicate more resources to changing and to improving their products. As many of you know, this is the first election cycle in our historic 2024 victory, the victory that brought Secretary Kennedy and President Trump into the heart of policymaking in Washington. And 2026 is our opportunity to send a clear message in every state. If you want to represent the American people, you have to represent the overwhelming majority who support these simple principles. Real food, not processed food. Gold standard science and transparency, no more corporate capture. Healthy food can be affordable and accessible, and a future for our children free from the cycle of chronic disease and over-medicalization. The message is simple and the stakes are profound. These are powerful forces that are up against us, and they want to divide us. They want to make us less powerful. They see that we're winning, and they want to do whatever they can to get in the way of that. But we're the strongest we can be when we unite, around shared purposes, grounded in what Secretary Kennedy has said so clearly time after time, that we have to love our children more than we hate each other. And that love is already producing benefits and results. On 60 Minutes, Secretary Kennedy spoke about the urgency of cleaning up our toxic foods system in an interview that reached tens of millions of people, and many of them beyond the usual MAHA group. And that interview sparked a viral discussion of the concern around GRAS standards that prevent us from knowing whether our food is truly safe. and snap changes that force stores all around the country and food deserts that really force them to carry healthier foods and real food so that they can sell those products. So we know something that nobody else knows, and that is that when candidates embrace MAHA, they're more likely to win. And we want to really get that out, that MAHA is a gift to the Republican Party, and we see them embracing it, and we want to encourage them to embrace it more. And when that message lands, we're going to see overwhelming victories in the upcoming midterms. And we're going to have the opportunity then to strengthen MAHA and double our policy wins nationwide. So on today's Media Hub, you're going to hear from Mike Tyson, Dr. Oz, Dr. Robert Malone, Gary Brecka, Russell Brand, Kyle Diamantas, and Dr. Eric Berg. First up, we have Dr. Berg. He's known as the Knowledge Doc, and he's helped people understand how the body works and, how to develop practical strategies to better our health. He's a great champion of the MAHA movement, which means that he's fighting day and night to end chronic disease. Welcome, Dr. Berg. Thanks for coming on again.
Tony, thanks so much. I want to chime in what you said. Ultra-processed foods weaken the strength of our population. I would consider myself probably an expert, world expert in ultra-processed foods because I had it for 28 years and I experienced the negative effects of it. In fact, I was a wrestler. I wrestled through high school and college until I actually fractured because my bones were so fragile. I was literally living on ultra-processed foods, no real foods, all through high school, college, wrestling, and cutting weight. I would talk about weak. I actually went into the military at the same right after that, and I barely passed the PT test because of poor diet. It was just my diet was terrible. So I want to talk a little bit more about ultra-processed foods in relationship to another little piece of the puzzle, which is the category that most ultra-processed foods fall into, which is something called snack foods. I know this is hard to believe, Tony, but if you go into the grocery store, they have entire aisles of chips, snack foods. They have entire aisles of crackers, cookies, candies, snack bars. I mean, a great majority of that grocery store is ultra-processed food snacks. Now, before the 1970s, snacking really wasn't a big thing because that would ruin your appetite, even when I grew up. And then all of a sudden, like in the 80s and then in 2000, like all of a sudden snacking became a natural thing. And especially with kids, just pushing these snacks on kids. The problem is, even if you're doing healthy snacks or even ultra-processed, which is worse, which is going to be mostly ultra-processed, every time you snack, every time you eat, you create an insulin spike. And that was happening with me. In fact, in my first book, I was recommending 6 meals a day, snacks. I mean, it's just bizarre to me to think that you would eat a meal and an hour and a half later, you'd have to eat something else. Like, what is going on with that? And so here I was, 211 pounds. My face was round. And I was doing mid-morning snacks, afternoon snacks, and then snacks at night. And I thought that was healthy. But of course, I was doing like apple and peanut butter and cheese and nuts. So anyway, I realized the snacking was bad at a certain point, and I cut those out. I went right down to 180 pounds. I was just holding fluid. I was inflamed. It created a huge change. So unfortunately, most people don't know about, like most chronic disease, underlying that is an insulin problem, which is rarely ever tested. And there's really no normal agreement on what the normal is. It's like anywhere between 2 and 20, 23. You do not want to have a fasting insulin over 7. Okay, you want like between 2 and 6. That's where you want your fasting insulin. When it becomes even like 8 or 9, especially 12, you're going to be at risk. You're going to have more problems with insulin resistance because of the constant snacking. So really, we're eating when we're not hungry. And we're especially adding in the ultra-processed foods, which is just like putting gasoline on a fire. and especially these kids. I mean, I was at a wrestling match on Sunday, and I'm looking to my right, and there's this kid. He's probably 10 years old, probably weighs 250 pounds, and he has a huge popcorn thing, a jumbo size Coca-Cola candy bar. I'm like, I didn't say anything to him, but I was like, wow, I was there. And it's become normalized, unfortunately. On top of that, it's really hard for an average person to say no to really cheap, super available, refined foods. It's just in your face everywhere. So really the only way to do it is for education, and also to orientate your environment so you don't buy it. Don't keep it in the house, because it's going to be calling out at you at night, just like it did with me. This is what we absolutely positively, we have no junk food in the house. And that's how I control it, especially if you have kids. Like, just because they're thin doesn't mean they're healthy. So you really need to get the junk out of the house so it's not tempting the kids. But I just wanted to bring up the importance of this snacking, which is a double-edged sword. It's like it's just like one thing that's just going to make ultra-processed foods that much worse. Thanks, Tony. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Eric. And it really is crazy that there are entire aisles in stores all around the country of just toxic snacks. And when I think about that, I think these are drugstores masquerading as grocery stores. That these are stores that are meant to poison people, meant to addict people. And we have to teach the public so that they know what's happening to them, so that they can learn to avoid it, so that we don't have a country full of people who are eating when they're not hungry, because people really want to be healthier. And I think that's a big part of your great success, is that millions of people are flocking to your common sense statements that are just easy to comprehend. And they recognize that they've been lied to and that they can have better, healthier, more joyful lives. So thanks for everything you do. Next up, we have Kyle Diamantas, and he heads the Human Foods Program at FDA, which covers all of the nutrition and food safety activities. He's the FDA's top food executive. He's been on this show many times. We're thrilled to have him once again. Welcome, Kyle Diamantas.
Hey, Tony. Thanks for having me on. Really appreciate it. I thought I'd spend a few minutes today just talking about grass, right? Generally recognized as safe. That's been in the news a lot this week, with Secretary Kennedy appearing on 60 Minutes and pretty widespread coverage of both grass and ultra-processed foods, which are different, but in some ways related topics. So GRAS refers to, again, the acronym generally recognized as safe. And this really dates back to 1958. If you go back to 1958, Congress passed and President Eisenhower signed what's now known as the Food Additive Amendments. At that time, not dissimilar to now, there was public concern over increasing chemical use in food processing. This was the post-World War II era, where families were moving into suburbs, family sizes were growing, and the government largely called on the food industry to do things like increase shelf life and stability, and to make products that parents could stock the pantry with and have in the pantry all week while the kids go to school. So, as a result of this industrialization, early industrialization of the food supply, in 1958, Congress passed and empowered FDA to require companies to demonstrate the safety of food additives by submitting to FDA what's called a formal food additive petition. This is a formal petition that a company must submit to FDA, and FDA must review and approve that. The Congress essentially said, if you want to introduce a new ingredient in the food supply, you have to petition FDA and get approval. This is all great, right? The problem is that in that same 1958 law, Congress created an exemption from that formal FDA approval process for what Congress considered to be ingredients that were generally recognized as safe, or GRAS, based on either a long history of use or expert consensus. And at the time, This was contemplated to be to common food ingredients like flour, vinegar, salt. In 1958, even with a push towards suburbia and industrialization, we did not have the modern food supply that is as complex, anywhere near as complex as it is today. And so, that was a reasonable interpretation at the time. Congress said, anything new, you have to petition FDA, but if you're generally recognized as safe, you don't have to go through that process. We're gonna allow a GRAS process to develop. That reasonable exemption at the time, well intended by Congress, has been stretched into what is now generally and colloquially referred to as a GRAS loophole, and has allowed for a regulatory framework to develop that has become the predominant pathway in America. Far more ingredients now utilize the GRAS pathway compared to the food additive petition process. Again, the GRAS pathway intended just to be an exemption for really substances that have a long and safe history of use in this country. And within that GRAS pathway, the regulatory framework is even further developed that has allowed companies to self-GRAS ingredients, meaning they can make their own conclusions and determinations of safety and bring an ingredient to the market without FDA oversight or even knowledge. So because of this, FDA sitting here today does not have a comprehensive list of ingredients found in the US food supply. This has been something that has been talked about for years. It's something that has become more mainstream under Secretary Kennedy's leadership and the leadership of President Trump and this administration. And it's something that Secretary Kennedy, this FDA and this administration are absolutely committed to taking steps to address and to closing the GRAS loophole. It's a major priority for this department. And I just want to share in the last few seconds here for context, the GRAS framework is pre-market, right? So we're talking about ingredients and additives getting onto the market via either the GRAS pathway or the food additive pathway in general. This FDA, under Secretary Kennedy's leadership, has also created a robust post-market process to take a look at these additives of concern that are already on the market, right? Regardless of whether that ingredient entered the market through the GRAS process or the food additive petition route, if it's on the market and it's an ingredient that we now have new data on, we are taking robust action to reassess those chemicals in the post-market framework. Both of those frameworks are important. It's a belt and suspenders approach. You can't have a robust post-market framework if you don't actually know what's in the food supply. And conversely, you can't have a robust pre-market process unless you're ready to have that systematic post-market process in place. So these are two really important concepts and two processes that Secretary Kennedy has emphasized and that we're committed to addressing in this FDA and this HHS. Thanks, Tony.
Yeah, thanks so much, Kyle. The GRAS loophole with, companies bringing thousands of chemicals into our food that are, not in the food anywhere in Europe, where they're just a few hundred chemicals in their food. It's an abomination. I mean, how could we do that to ourselves? How could we do that to our children? So it is just such an incredible MAHA win to be going back and looking at that closely for the first time in, 20, 30 years that an administration is really looking at that closely. So thanks so much for the work that you're doing and for the right direction that we're heading in.
Thanks, John.
Next up, we have Dr. Mehmet Oz. He, as you all know, is the head of Medicare and Medicaid, which involves something like 160 million people in this country. And he's been working incredibly hard to shift the focus from treatment to prevention, from drugs to nutrition, and for making it easier and more affordable to be healthy in this country. Thanks so much for coming on again, Dr. Oz.
Tony, thanks for having me. Just to riff off of what Kyle just said, there's so many different ways we can make it easier to be healthy in America. But without question, one of the biggest challenges we face is the messaging around what we've accomplished. The remarkable reality of the last year is that we've been going so fast, achieving so much, that it's often difficult for people to get their arms around how much has been accomplished. There's some good things about that, by the way. The president does like to move quickly because, folks try to stop us, are too often chasing after yesterday's prize. And today we're on to something newer and arguably more important. But I wanted to highlight some realities that are going to come to fruition pretty quickly. And I do think some of them have already done a lot of the heavy lifting on. The big challenge that a lot of Americans articulate when we ask them how we can help is affordability. It's just become really difficult for Americans to be able to afford basic food supplies. Housing has become a big problem. And certainly healthcare is top of the list when it comes to affordability, because unlike food or housing, which are problematic if you can't afford them, there's usually stopgap measures that can get you through the day. Whereas in healthcare, if you're skipping your medications because you can't afford your insulin and I remember doing shows where we would tell people who were buying insulin on the black market, then they would only take a little bit of the insulin in a vial. That way they could prevent themselves from developing the life-threatening complication of diabetes. It's called ketoacidosis. But you would still have blood sugars in the 300-400 range. So you're not healthy. You're going to die from diabetes, which is basically pieces of glass shrapnel as glucose molecules scraping into very delicate, thin Teflon lining of your arteries. You don't want that. That's why your blood sugar is supposed to be low enough that your body can recover from whatever small injuries may have happened and not be overly inflamed. But if you're forced to triage your insulin because you can't afford it, that's a problem. So we have affordability issues on pharmaceutical medications. We have affordability issues on buying insurance. You have affordability issues on paying medical bills. All these sort of come to a head in driving a fair amount of bankruptcies, but also it gets people to feel insecure about their lives, understandably, and they feel like they don't own a piece of the rock. Because if you're an American, you ought to have insurance to be able to help you manage some of the crises that might be facing. So we have spent a lot of time in this administration trying to tackle some of these issues. There's one great example that many of you probably heard a bit about, but I want to make sure you're clear on it. It's called most favored nation drug pricing. Until last week, it was mostly theoretical for a lot of people. You knew we were negotiating aggressively with pharmaceutical companies to get better pricing that actually reflects what other people pay in other countries. Because the unfortunate truth in America is if you go to the grocery store, or rather the drugstore to buy medications, you're paying on average 3 times more for that same drug than as if you were buying it in another country, even Canada. That's why people are bringing drugs from other countries just to be able to get a lower price. We have dealt with that. The president insisted appropriately that we confront drug company leaders and let them know that we're onto the gig. And they sort of acknowledged that this was happening. They could get away with it for a long time. They can't get away with it anymore. So they're fixing the problem. And no longer are they going to be charging us 3 times more for the same product made in the same factory, often here in America. It's going to be the same price, the most favored price of any nation. But last week we changed your ability to get access to it by launching a website called TrumpRx.gov. You should all check it out. Millions of Americans have checked it out. Millions of interactions have also occurred, and we've gotten tens of thousands of prescriptions and coupons being downloaded. Again, these are some of the most popular brand products in America, the weight loss medications, the GLP-1 drugs. If you're on any of those, please try them. And I'm not saying these drugs have the salvation to your future. You have to use lifestyle always primarily, but the ability to get access to these or asthma drugs or medications for fertility. These are wonderful opportunities. In fact, fertility drugs may be the most popular in many ways because a lot of young couples are under-babied. 1 in 3 couples can't have the number of babies they want. I also think we've got a great opportunity in making everything more transparent, making it easier for you to understand in plain English what your insurance company is saying to you, about making doctor's appointments, about how much of the money you're paying in a premium actually goes to caring for you versus going to insurance company profits. Hospitals are getting more transparent. Again, this doesn't happen easily, but we have all this interoperability work, heavy lifts that have already occurred to ensure that data can be shared back and forth. So I think we're moving in the right direction with cost and affordability. It's going to take a while for the American people to feel it sustainably enough that they believe this is happening. But I'm encouraged by all the economic indicators that we're headed in the right direction, and we're going to do our share by making it easier to be healthy in America. Tony, back to you.
Thanks so much. It's such a great point that access and affordability are, really the main things to drugs, to food, to insurance, and that having a government that really fights for the American people and is willing to stand up to these big companies, while letting them do what they do, make the money that they need to make, but also protect the American public and make sure that the public has the information that it needs, the access that it needs to make good decisions and to get the products, the food, the healthcare that they really need. So thanks so much for everything you're doing.
Hey, Tony, can I introduce Russell if he's next?
Yeah, definitely.
Good to see you, you magnificent man.
I was walking out to a beach access point that Russell knew of. And I come to the end of this is at dawn, by the way. And I look out in this beautiful, tranquil environment, the waves gently lapping on the sand, tickling Russell's toes because he's sitting in a meditative state on the beach, contemplating life, encouraging the sun to gently come upwards as he lifted his eyes towards sky. And I realized I was witnessing heaven embodied in my friend Russell Brand. So I hope he brings a little bit of that spark of energy to this conversation. Russell, take it away.
What a beautiful introduction from a beautiful man. On that very same beach, that very same day, I knew I was in the company of a prince. When I heard about Dr. Oz's background, not only in cardiology, but medicine more broadly, it becomes clear that you're dealing with an anointed one. God does not give a man hair like that unless he intends to use him judiciously and effectively. And thanks to this administration, Dr. Oz's abilities are now being correctly and properly deployed. I feel safe with our money and our health in your hands, sir. Thank you for that beautiful, shore-side recollection.
I want you to make sure you mention Mike Tyson's hair when you introduce him as well. Equal footing.
Absolutely. I will mention, well, if I'm introducing Mike, let me shape up and take some creatine and maybe even some steroids. But I've had a few skirmishes with Mike Tyson before, and they went precisely how you might imagine they would go. I would love to talk to you all today while I have your ear and attention, not only about the presence of the great Gavin de Becker, author and star of the movement here present.
Hello. By the way, Tony asked me if I could do the show today, and I couldn't do the show today because I was going to be with Russell. So now I'm sitting with Russell, and I've obviously been lured into the show, hooked like this, and dragged against my will. I have nothing constructive to say. I oppose the entire MAHA movement. Pardon me. I don't oppose the entire MAHA movement. I support the entire MAHA movement. There we go. That's how ill-prepared I was. Back to Russell.
I'd like to clarify that Gavin de Becker was consensually appearing just then. It seems important, valid, and worthwhile for me to always clarify that consent was achieved first whenever I do anything with anyone. And I would never fish hook anybody, even someone with the beautiful teeth that Gavin de Becker clearly possesses. Now, earlier today, I was at a food bank here in the Florida Panhandle. One mightn't imagine that Florida, particularly this region, had been infected with poverty in the manner that it must have done for there to be a deficit that needs to be picked up by food banks and by that kind of Christian charity work. And isn't it interesting how frequently it falls to Christians to undertake these endeavors? Not that I'm saying that compassion and kindness and charity are exclusively Christian values, but they very definitively are. When I walked around the food bank, I looked at the food that they have in store, some of which is provided, in fact, by the government, and was struck again by the extraordinary fact that some of it is imported from China. Much of it is high in salts and seed oils. There's these people that are, by definition, impoverished and in need of charity and aid are having inflicted upon them food of, at best, secondary quality. One time I talked to the great Jim O'Neill, the deputy there at the HHS, and I said, what would it take just for a community to be fed local, organic food? What kind of cultural and social change would it take for us to eat real food, this new MAHA mantra, this new claim and offering? Well, it would represent such significant change. And while we're so blessed to have educators and influencers and teachers like Gary Brecka, who happens to be on my screen now, good to see you, Gary, on the call, really it seems to me that the change that we must pursue most vehemently is the ability for Americans at the level of the individual, family and community to feed ourselves, yourselves, suppose I'm still English, that accent don't lie, does it? But no taxation without representation. I disavow that. If you're getting taxed, you should get represented. And isn't it extraordinary the degree of change that it would take for all of our institutions, financial and state, for people to eat food that was reared and grown as near as possible to where they're eating it, for people to eat food that had been grown and reared as near as possible to where they're eating it, to create interconnected communities where people don't assume that everything has to be imported and endlessly transported, where we eat seasonally, where we harmonize with the conditions in which we were created and with which we have been charged stewardship, to grow food respectfully and reverently, to make food with love, to deploy science judiciously and analysis prudently, so we know what we're putting in our bodies and why. Food is a political issue. Everything is a political issue. The poorest people are in general eating the worst food. Wouldn't it be glorious to return to a time where people could grow and eat their own food, where communities were able to be responsible for our own food, where the presumed brokerage of centralized institutions weren't inserted into every single transaction? You eat this because it's best for Kraft Foods if you eat this. You eat this because it's best for Pfizer if you end up with this set of conditions that you'll ultimately get from eating that amount of sugar and seed oil. There are just too many industries dependent on you staying sick for you ever to be healthy. Just by eating an apple not immersed in pesticides, you're making a political act. And maybe our society fell with a bite being taken from forbidden fruit, though it's never specified that it's an apple. And maybe our society will be saved when we start to eat real food responsibly and sensibly. From me and the ever-consensual Gavin Becker, here on the couch, writer of Forbidden Facts, great author, great leader, great teacher. That's a thank you from the Florida Panhandle. And my dream and my prayer is that one day, if there have to be food banks because there is poverty, and like our Lord says, the poor will always be with us, that you would walk in there and see beautiful, healthy, whole food being distributed lovingly and righteously. Tony, thanks for having me on. Tony, I better go and finish that book, man. I've got to go and write that book. I'm so close to being finished. It's looking good. It's looking good. I'm very pleased with it. Praise the Lord. Thanks, everyone, for having me on.
Thanks so much. Do you want to say something to Mike Tyson? He's coming on next.
Yes, I'm glad he's coming on because I've been wanting to challenge Mike to a fight. Oh, no, he's really there. Oh, hello, Mike. How amazing to see you.
I love you, brother. I love you.
I love you. Praise the Lord. I hope that you are free and in recovery. I pray for you regularly. I'd like to take this opportunity to apologize to you, Mike, for that time when I asked you a stupid question. You probably don't even remember it. You live a big and busy life. But I want to reiterate my respect and admiration for you as a champion and as a man in recovery, and now as an advocate for these beautiful values. And as I promised I would tell Dr. Oz, your hair looks fantastic. And I'm going to have to mean body hair by that because you're a shaved man. But I also am confident that your body hair looks fantastic. And I'll leave it there, Mike, because I don't want to, re-cause the trauma.
It's all love, brother. It's all love, brother.
All love. Praise the Lord. Cheers, Mike.
Thank you, brother.
God bless you.
Hey, Mike, I just want to say a couple things. Mike, one of the things that's been really crazy this week is that it's clear that mainstream media is just scared to death of you. They're scared of MAHA. They're scared of the incredible Super Bowl ad that we made. And they've been bringing on, 60 Minutes had, all these hotshots on. They had Dr. Richard Lustig, Michael Pollan, all these different people coming on to talk about the importance of eating real food, of not eating ultra-processed food. So the left is trying to sort of co-opt this, to take it, make it their own, because they know that 98% of the public want this, that they're sick and tired of being poisoned, of being fed things that are unhealthy, and being lied to. And you came out there and you told the truth to 150 million people, and it just sent them all crazy. They didn't know what to say next. So, how does that feel?
Couldn't debate it at all. I understand. And this is something that's close to my heart, and I'm glad I'm participating. This is great. This is just something I never fathomed happening.
Yeah, what happened to your sister at 25 years old shouldn't happen to anybody in this country.
No,
and it's happening to millions of people.
God willing, man, we're going to take care of this country, put us back in fighting shape, number one.
Yeah, I was saying before, 70% of the American public wouldn't qualify to go in the military now. That's 7 out of 10 people. It's just crazy.
That's just unbelievable. Just unbelievable.
So, you want to
we're going to probably have to keep these illegal guys to fight for us now. We're not in shape. God.
Gonna have to get somebody or really start training. Maybe it's, fight like Mike.
They're going to do it. I think they're going to do it, man. I believe in this country. I think they're going to do it.
Yeah, it is crazy that in a poll that I just saw, it really is true. 98% of the American public want their kids to eat healthier food at lunch, want, chemicals out of our food, want real food in their lives. So it's going to happen now. It's time for this change. People are ready for it. And you've taken a big punch towards that.
Hey, listen, I'm going to give everything I got towards this. This is something that I want to be involved with for the rest of my life.
Yeah. Do you want to just tell us just a bit about your health journey? And once again, I mean, you mentioned it last week, but just the idea of how you got involved.
Hey, at first I used to, I was gaining my daughter had died and I got very depressed. I started eating, I must have gained 120 pounds. And I did some kind of, what is that? Talk about just some kind of spiritual journey. And I decided to lose the weight, eat nothing. The only thing I ate was tomato soup and rice. That's all I ate for like 2 months. I lost 20 pounds. 2 months.
Wow. So if somebody's listening to this and they feel overwhelmed, too busy, they don't have the resources, they don't know what to do, what advice would you give them? What's the first step they can take to start reclaiming their health?
The first thing I do is walk. I start building up my confidence by walking and walking. Then when I get further, like a couple of miles, then I go to a gym somewhere and I work out. Your health is your first wealth, man, because everything's bad till you lose your health and there's no more problems. That's all we have is our health. We have to take care of ourselves.
Bobby Kennedy.
Guy dying of a heart attack. That's incredible. Weighing 400 pounds in this country.
Yeah, Bobby Kennedy says that somebody who's healthy has 1,000 dreams, and somebody who's sick has only one dream. They just want to get healthy. They just want to have it over with. So, I'm just really grateful that you took this up, and we want to keep on working with you, keep on doing stuff with you. It just seems like this really got through to everybody in the country. I don't think you could live in this country and not have seen that ad, not have heard of that ad, not know that you've taken up this fight. So that's an incredible thing. It's an incredible step forward.
I'm just God willing. I'm here for the fight, guys, to the end.
Thanks so much, Mike. Really appreciate it.
God bless you.
You too. Next up, we have Dr. Robert Malone, and he is, probably the most important voice for medical freedom and informed consent, but he just has a lot of great ideas about all kinds of things. And, we love to have him come on and just, teach us just a bit of what he knows. So thanks again for coming on for maybe the 20th time. Great to have you here.
Thanks a lot, Tony. So today I want to share in the next 4 to 5 minutes some really cool MAHA science. I'm going to talk to you about the remarkable immunology of pregnancy and breast milk. That's a topic that hasn't been covered very much. And here's a question for you. What if I told you that the human body has been quietly running one of the most sophisticated immune laboratories in all of nature inside every pregnant woman every single day? Scientists have spent decades thinking pregnancy simply suppresses the immune system, a kind of biological stand-down order. But the latest research tells a much more exciting story. Pregnancy doesn't weaken your defenses, it completely reinvents them. And the payoff isn't just to protect the mother. It sets up a brand new human being for a healthy life. As Dr. Patrick Soon-Shiong has observed, over the last 50 years, we've done so many things wrong regarding the immune system, and our attitudes about pregnancy and breastfeeding are another example of this basic observation. When I was born, mothers were encouraged to start using synthetic formula as soon as possible. Yet we know now, this was yet more propaganda designed to sell a fake, highly processed food, artificial breast milk. Think of your immune system like a well-trained army. Normally, it's on full alert, seeking out and destroying anything foreign, but a growing baby is technically genetically foreign. Half of its DNA comes from someone else entirely. So how does the body not attack it? It doesn't press pause on the army. Instead, it retrains it. Hormones like progesterone and estrogen send signals body-wide, not just to the womb, but to immune cells throughout the entire bloodstream. The immune system shifts from its usual aggressive attack-first mode into something more nuanced, a mode that can tolerate the baby while still hunting down real threats like bacteria and viruses. Neutrophils, white cells, your frontline immune soldiers, actually increase in number during pregnancy, but they become much more selective about when they fire. Inflammation is carefully managed. The whole system is recalibrated, not reduced. There's science behind this now, and it's really starting to increase. A 2025 study from Mount Sinai put it bluntly. The immune changes of pregnancy are dramatic, body-wide, and beautifully purposeful. This isn't a system under stress. This is a system performing an extraordinary act of biological engineering. Now, this recalibration does have some implications worth knowing about. When a pregnant woman gets vaccinated, she builds a form of protective immune response, but it differs from what happens when natural immunity develops to an actual infection, a story we've heard before. Researchers have found that the antibodies naturally produced during pregnancy can look a little different. They may be slightly less broad in the range of virus variants they target, but the body compensates by ramping up other defenses like the cells that physically engulf and destroy pathogens, neutrophils and other white cells. It's a trade-off, and it's a smart one. What this tells us is that pregnant women aren't just small adults in terms of how we design vaccine programs and think about immunology. They're a distinct immunological population, and they deserve research that reflects that. The science, quote unquote, is starting to ask better questions, and that's genuinely good news. But here's where the story gets truly remarkable, because after birth, the mother's body doesn't stop protecting her baby. It opens a second channel, and that channel is breast milk. At our farm, we know all about this because newborn horses will die if they don't drink milk from their dam in the first few hours of life. Breast milk is often described as food, but it's so much more than that. It's a living immune system, delivered fresh, multiple times a day, perfectly tailored to the environment of the baby in which it actually lives. The secret weapon is a special type of antibody called secretory IgA, and it does something remarkable. When baby breastfeeds, these antibodies coat the lining of the baby's throat, nose, ears, and gut. They act like a protective film, grabbing onto bacteria and viruses before they can even get inside the body. The pathogens get neutralized right there at the door before any alarm is ever raised. And they're customized. Research has shown that mother's immune system continually samples the pathogens in her immediate environment and produces targeted antibodies that show up in her milk, sometimes within hours. So the next time someone describes a pregnant body as compromised or run down, you can offer a polite correction. What's actually happening is nothing short of extraordinary. A pregnant woman is running the most advanced immunological operation in nature, and when she breastfeeds, she hands that protection directly to her child, warm, personal, and alive. That's not vulnerability. That's a superpower. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks so much, Robert. It's obviously such an important point that we need to rebuild our immune systems in this country as a way to become strong once again, to go from having the sickest children on earth to having the healthiest children on earth. And, we all know, and it almost sounds like a cliche, but it is a fact that a country is only as strong as its children. And, we can have stronger children by doing, eating more real food, by doing more breastfeeding, and by doing many of the things that we talk about on this show. So thanks a lot for coming on again.
Thanks, Tony.
Next up, we have Gary Brecka, who is a visionary. He's been called the ultimate human. He's a renowned human biologist. And, he is one of the people out there who is working hard to make sure that we're not as sick as we've been, and to teach us that and give us the tools to show us how to become more and more healthy. And we're very grateful for that. Thanks again for coming on for maybe the 28th time. I know you travel all around the world. We're very grateful that you make time to come and talk to us.
I'm so grateful that you guys have me every week, Tony. Truly, I would like to make a request that either Russell Brand or Mehmet Oz introduce me from now on, because They do the most eloquent introductions. No offense to you, but every time I see those guys introduce each other, I get a little jealous. I want them to deliver my eulogy. But I
will make it happen.
All right, thank you. Yeah, that's a formal request. I was actually looking at, and I don't do this very often because I usually don't care about it, but I was actually looking at some interesting polling data surrounding MAHA. Because very often it's sort of flagged as a political movement, which allows people to oppose it without really understanding what the MAHA movement is about, and they just do it on political boundaries, and then facts and reason don't matter. But I was really encouraged by this Washington Post survey of parents. It was a KFF survey. I'm happy to send it over to the team so you can share it. But broadly, at least 8 in 10 parents in the survey, and it was an apolitical survey, support increasing government regulations on dyes and chemical food additives. About 82% of parents supported the same on highly processed foods and added sugars. And it goes on to cite other support. The lowest end of the range was 68%. The highest end of the range was in the high 80s, which tells you that this really is a political movement. And we really are gaining traction with the masses, and especially with parents that are concerned about the future of their children. And so one of the things I wanted to just talk about was the history of the United States when we attempted to do very noble things, but as always, when we mess with Mother Nature, we find out years later, sometimes decades later, that we've made a mistake. And every time we try to outsmart Mother Nature, we generally find out that she's smarter than we are. And we started programs, fortification programs, decades ago. And the first one started in the 20s with salt, when we started adding iodine to salt to fix iodine deficiencies. In the early 30s, we started adding vitamin D to milk, probably also a very good thing. But in the 40s, we discovered a chemical called folic acid. We synthesized this chemical in a laboratory. Folic acid is the synthesized form or the synthetic form of folate. Now, folate occurs naturally in nature. Folic acid does not. I get a lot of heat for talking about this online, and I just wanted to talk about it on this MAHA call because in the 40s, we began the enrichment of flour and bread because we discovered that we could synthesize folate in a laboratory in the form of folic acid. What we didn't realize at the time was that about 46% of the population has a very common gene mutation called MTHFR. I won't tell you what the nickname is for that gene, but you can figure it out. And what this gene does is it impairs the ability for the body to process folic acid. In fact, it blocks the body's capacity to process folic acid. In 1998, when we made it mandatory that folic acid fortification was in all enriched cereals and grains, and enriched cereals and grains form the basis of a lot of children's diets, we saw skyrocketing levels of ADD, ADHD, OCD, what we categorize as learning disabilities, impulse control disorders, difficulty following directions, completing assignments, and hyperactivity, which we solved by breaking the nervous system, adding amphetamines so that we could race the central nervous system to match the pace of these young children's minds. And I'm not saying that this was done intentionally, but folic acid is a particular concern of mine because the prevalence of this gene mutation. And the correlation is certainly there. The causation has also now been proven in multiple double-blind, placebo-controlled studies where removing folic acid, fortified or enriched foods from children's diets calms down these incidents of what we call mood disorders, mental illnesses, especially with regard to attention deficit disorder, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, and disorders that they label as an inability to follow directions or complete assignments or what have you. And, big strides have been made in the study of genetics, genetic methylation pathways. We know that our genes load the gun, our epigenetics, our lifestyle pulls the trigger. But these fortified or enriched foods is one of those triggers that gets pulled in 46% of these children who have this genetic variant. And it doesn't mean that, I hate to use the term mutation, but they have this genetic variant that impairs their ability to process folic acid. And so what we're doing at MAHA is not just cleaning up the food supply, we're cleaning up what's added to our food supply, not just how it is grown in the soil or how animals are farmed and raised, but what we then apply to our food before it makes it to the table. Very often it's not the food or the plant, as in the case with seed oils in particular, it's the distance from the food to the table. You can't degum things with hexane, deodorize them with sodium hydroxide, heat them until they're rancid at 405 degrees, bleach them, bottle them, put them on the shelf, and say that has no effect on our cellular biology. It causes tremendous levels of oxidation and oxidative stress, causes high amounts of inflammation and pro-inflammatory cytokines, histamines, what have you. But this food enrichment program is another one that I would love to draw parents' attention to, because I have seen, I exited one of the larger functional health clinics in the country in early January of last year. But before I exited, we had seen north of 250,000 active patients. And very often what we were able to do with parents who had children that were suffering from some of these conditions was subtractive medicine. Remove things like these additives, preservatives, thickening agents, and in particular, fortified or enriched foods that contained folic acid. And we saw dramatic, and again, this is anecdotal, but we saw dramatic improvements in behavior across the board. Parents that have kids that it's a full contact sport to get their kid in the car to go to school in the morning very often don't realize that what you're feeding them in the morning is very often exciting their brain. It's causing a rise in what are called catecholamines, these fight or flight neurotransmitters, norepinephrine, epinephrine, ephedrine, dopamine, one of those we call adrenaline. So we actually have hormonal and neurotransmitter reactions in the human body to some of these synthetic ingredients. I also find it very difficult to believe that something that we make in a laboratory that does not exist naturally in nature, that you can't find anywhere on the surface of the earth, is somehow essential to a healthy pregnancy. It's not. It's not the folic acid that prevents neural tube defects. It's the derivative of folate called methylfolate or folinic acid that prevents neural tube defects. We could actually skip this fortification process and go right to whole foods, get our nutrients from folate, which does occur naturally in nature, or if we need to supplement with something like methylfolate or folinic acid. So I have gone dramatically over my time, so I apologize. I see now the red buzzer there, but that's what I wanted to talk on today.
Thanks, Gary. And that's all stuff that we're willing to listen further to. So don't worry about going over when we all really need this information. And it's so clear that when we create problems by making food errors, by denying children things that they need, by giving them things that harm them, and then trying to solve those problems by supplementing or by drugging children, we are creating bigger and bigger problems, and it's a cycle that then just needs to be unwound. And that, like you were saying, to lessen the disconnect between people and their food, and have a greater proximity of food to our table, of real food, of whole food, that can sort of end this whole cycle of sort of mental, psychological, physical poverty.
Amen.
So thanks so much for the incredible work that you're doing. Next up, we have Dr. Daniel Pompa, and he is the author of The Cellular Healing Diet. He's the leading cellular health expert and teaches practitioners all around the world advanced detoxification strategies. Thanks for so much for coming on once again, Dr. Pompa.
If you have driving in a snowstorm, I got caught doing a podcast and a snowstorm came in, so I should have been home long ago, but hopefully my reception stays good here. I want to discuss art and two things that are talked about. Yet I don't know that people really understand the effect that two things are having on the cell membrane. And it's a topic that is near and dear to my heart because there's a saying, life and death begins on the membrane. And I would say this for sure, people's health in general how good they feel day to day, how well their hormones work, how well they use fat for energy, how well they stay lean as they age, and even how well they age begins on your cell membranes. There's a lot of talk and understanding today about the mitochondria, but where there's not a lot of understanding talk oftentimes is the fact that the mitochondria functions.
Looks like we're having a little bit of trouble with the audio.
Tony,
Dan,
his
can you
call
hear us?
disconnected.
Okay. All right. So I think let's. Do you want to give him a second to come back? Let's just give him just a few seconds to call back in. Okay. So what I'll do is I'll start the sort of roundup, and if he logs back in, we can have him say a few final words. But generally, I just want to thank you for joining our 26th MAHA Media Hub, and for tuning in each week to hear all the people we have talk about the MAHA movement. We have just great speakers on. We want you to, we really want to encourage you to keep coming on week after week, to tell your friends, to put it on social media. And one of the things that I always say is that we have really powerful tools at our fingertips. We have the MAHA report on Substack with now hundreds of thousands of subscribers. We have the incredible MAHA Institute roundtables, the historic MAHA Summit, which is going to be once each year, but it's a really, really big event, and we'll tell you more when we get closer. We have the legislative tracker. We have MAHA films, books, parties, a mailing list of well over 2 million MAHA warriors. And then, of course, we have many of the people who are listening to this call, which are thousands and thousands of MAHA influencers with hundreds of millions of followers. So, going into the midterms, Dr. Pompa, you are back. You want to say a few more words?
Yeah.
I was just sort of winding up. But great to have you back.
I'm so sorry. This topic is so important that I really mean, I'll say something briefly and I'll build on it next time because there's so much here. Cell membranes are how really we make energy in our mitochondria. Cell membranes is where the receptors to our hormones are. And right now, I think a lot of people are reaching out to bioidentical hormones. There's a time and a place, no doubt about it. That said, many of the hormone problems are really hormone resistance, where our cells cannot hear the hormones. And again, that is because of a membrane. The health of our membranes determines the health of our hormones. The health of our membranes determines how well we bring nutrients in our cells for energy and how well we bring toxins out. One of the things I teach classes just on how to repair membranes. And one of the key first steps, and this is what I want everyone to hear, is removing seed oils. And again, seed oils is a blanket statement. You could have a flaxseed cold pressed, and for it could be done well, and it could be okay, it could be healthy. But that's not what we're buying in processed food. All the seed oils in processed food is adulterated. It is rancid. And here's the problem. Omega-6 has a very bad reputation as we'll get too much. But the problem is the omega-6, it's a parent oil. It's essential in the cell membranes, arguably more important than omega-3 for both parent oil. But the problem is the reason why rancid omega-6 typically found in seed oils is so bad, it's because it's so important for fixing the membrane. Those rancid oils go right into the membrane and cause the loss of cellular fluidity. They cause inflammation in the cell, interrupting our hormones, the way they function, and even the way we bring nutrition and move toxins in and out of the cell. So therefore, the first thing we can do is remove these bad oils and start to get the good oils in. And that's key, right? We need omega-6, we need omega-3, but we don't need it to be adulterated. I hate fish oil, and I get a lot of critique about that. But understand that the saturation of an oil makes it stable, meaning we have tallow, lard, butter, etc. Those are saturated fats that are stable and they take heat very well. We can fry in tallow. That's how stable it is, right? Okay, we understand that. There's saturated mean there's no double bonds. Let's add one double bond. And now we have a mono unsaturated fat like olive oil. Takes heat better, does it? But we know even olive oil, you can go above a heat point and it can go and become adulterated, right? And a lot of olive oil in processed food is adulterated. So don't be fooled by that as well. Okay, so then we can go up the ladder a little more. Seed oils have between 2 and 3 double bonds, right? So it's a little more unstable than olive oil. You all know this, right? But I'm just kind of, bringing you through this to understand. Well, guess how many double bonds fish oil has? 5 or 6. Okay, I love fish oil in fish. I love vegetable oil in vegetables where they're protected, you see. So there is a difference. The more double bonds, the more unstable it is. So not a fan. So, but that said, I love all of those fats especially when they're in foods, because they do repair the membranes. The second big devastation that we have on our membranes is the toxins. I was mercury poisoned, silver amalgam fillings, putting mercury into my brain throughout my body, and it absolutely decimated my health. But it decimated my membranes. When I learned how to fix membranes, that's when I started being able to detox the mercury out. Fixing the membrane was more important to detox. That's my saying. If we fix the cell, we get well, but real detox is a cellular issue. That's the key. Membranes leading the way. So if we absolutely desire to fix membranes, we have to eliminate these toxins, not just from our food, but I'm going to be bringing some dentists on in the future talking about doing it correctly. Why so much chronic disease starts in the mouth. Silver fillings that contain 50% mercury is just one of the problems, by the way. But my point is, toxins disrupt cell membranes, which disrupts hormones, disrupts the cell's ability to detox, disrupts energy pathways in the mitochondria, even how we fold and make proteins, because membranes are in the endoplasmic reticulum. Membranes are the key to health. First step, and this is all I had time today for, is removing those bad fats and replacing them with good. We'll talk more about that next time. So, Tony, I'm sorry I was driving in a car, but at least we got that part of the message in.
Yeah, that was great. Very important message. Get rid of the bad oils, eat good oils, eat tallow, lard, butter, cook with them. If we can improve our cell membranes, we can clear toxins, lessen inflammation, help our immune systems fight off disease, cleanse our bodies, detox, lead happier, healthier lives. All of that is something that I think everybody watching this show and everybody in the country wants to do. So thanks for your mission, your help, and your wise words.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I'll expand on that topic next time. I just threw too much at once at people. All right, thanks, Tony.
No, that was great. Thanks a lot. So to just wind up, I was saying that MAHA is going to be a very powerful force in the midterms, and we're going to harness every bit of that power. Every influencer we have, every party we have, every show we have, every article we write. We're going to make sure that we win the midterms so that our team, so that Secretary Kennedy, President Trump, the incredible team that they've built can continue to make America healthy. And, this is an existential battle. We're fighting it to the very end. And we realize that the midterms are the sort of the tip of the spear, that if we don't win the midterms, we can't complete this mission. So, following this call, you're going to get an email that's going to have clips from the call. It's going to have things you can do, resources, things to post. So we hope that you'll do that, that you'll share our content in as many places as you possibly can. And let's all just work together, make this country healthy, and hope to see you again next week. And once again, like I said before, try to get as many people to see the messages that we post in the email that we send, and join us next week. Thanks again.
America's children are sick, and moms have been betrayed. The time for empty promises, long past. Now is a time for action. MAHA is the most powerful force of collective action in generations. The grassroots power of moms and activists has created an army of health warriors with more reach than all mainstream media combined. Together, we can end the chronic disease epidemic. MAHA's influence is reaching millions. It's reaching Congress. And that energy, these chain reactions, are working.
How about Operation Stork Speed?
Dozens of food companies removing toxic ingredients.
I plan to lead by example.
MAHA is now.
We're talking about how to change the culture.
The American people want America healthy again.
It is a renaissance moment in health in America.
For health, freedom, and the truth. Join us at MAHA Action.